Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Priyadarshini Marathe, and I'm very happy to welcome you all to our second CESR webinar. The theme for today is wanting to know or finding out what are the reasons why you might fail at your CESR application and what to do if you would like to absolutely succeed at your CESR application. We have our very own EM consultant, Dr. Aqib Hafeez, today with us, and he's going to do this talk for us. Just a note to all the participants, we will be recording this meeting for others to watch as well. So if you would like to ask a question, please put it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and you can get involved. We'll take questions at the end of Aqib's presentation. So Aqib, over to you. You can begin.
So how, well, basically, I'm just going to go through the personal experience along with some of the experience I came across before putting in my application and some of them after I submitted my application. Today's thought, I thought it never goes wrong what's written here, because modesty does help. Here we go. The common issues. First is that some of the consultants, and especially two examples that I have come across where the consultants who gave that advice that you can approach this application without the exam were basically a CCT consultant, so they kind of have never gone through that. So if anybody tells you that, approach it because you have a lot of experience behind you without the FRCAM exam, then you will certainly struggle. And if I'm right with the current information, the exam is a must now. With the secondments, the areas where secondments needs to be done and they are done outside UK, either they have to be very, very recent or they are going to challenge it. So you're better off doing your secondments while you are in the UK and use that evidence. Work-based assessment. Personally, I think at least 3 for every major cases, and 1 is enough for the minor or sub-major cases. When you do your work-based assessments, make sure that they are at least ST5 above who are signing this. Like, don't just get it signed by an ENP or a staff nurse. However, if you have done some PEDS IV line, that you can get it signed by the PEDS ENP, that is acceptable. Level 1 ultrasound, one of the person approached this by saying that I have done so many scans, I don't need a formal level 1 ultrasound. And obviously that application was rejected based on that. Audit cycle, one of the colleague I know has done at least 5 audits, but did not complete the audit cycle. So he was asked to complete the audit cycle. CPD diary, I fell into that trap myself. I did have approximately 300 hours over 5 years, but I did not write reflection on that and they did not accept it. So they asked me to write a reflection of 250 hours before I resubmitted my application. And then the reflection of the cases that you see during your work experience, and also the poor arrangement of the documents, like you just submitted without giving them a decent index as to which evidence to be found where. Then although the evidence is in there, they will not look for it. They will just write back to you that we could not find the evidence. Basically, actually GMC does that to you. So these are the common issues where things can go wrong when you submit your application. So the requisite for the application is FRCAM or an equivalent exam is a must. So you should have that. Audit cycle, you should complete it, but please don't choose an audit cycle where you just retrospectively go and look at the notes and say, I looked at the notes and then I looked at the notes again, and that is how I've completed my audit cycle. There has to be some legwork given in it before you write the second one. Make sure that the what's the word I'm looking for? Recommendations you make in the first one, they are kind of at least 90% of it are followed in the second one. So choose your topic carefully and choose a decent one. Level 1 ultrasound, if you have money, then you can do it via Infomet, because before they do your final test, they give you 1 day of extensive teaching. But if you don't want to spend the money, then obviously our focus lead, Dr. Priya, she can sign you off, and then finally it goes to the regional director for the ultrasound, who does the final sign off. But obviously the recommendation has to be by your local focus lead. So wherever you are working, find out who is your ultrasound lead in that department. But for John Radcliffe and Portal, this is Dr. Priya Marathe. When it comes to reflection, there has to be at least 10 reflections over 5 years, and this is basically, I'm talking about an interesting case which you have come across. So you should write a formal reflection, whichever format you use. It's entirely up to you. Otherwise, literally, the patient came in with this, I have done that, this is what I have learned, and how will it change my practice? And you do that. The trauma I went through about writing this 250 hours of CPD reflection, the best way to do it, that make sure that you have a CPD diary you are following, whether it's the Royal College or whether it's the Emergency Medicine Royal College CPD. So I've seen some people using other CPD formats, entirely up to you. But obviously, if you are going for the Royal College exam and you're going to be a member of that college, you're better off using the CPD diary of the local college. And my suggestion is that whenever you do a course, just write 3-4 lines and just paste it in there, so that at the end, when you generate that report, then that job is done, rather than you at the end of 5 years sitting writing all that. Needless to say, you have to be a member of Royal College of Emergency Medicine before you apply, and it will make sense. You want somebody to give you a qualification that allows you to come on the specialist register, that you pay them some money to achieve that. How to achieve FRCAM? There is no shortcut to that. You have to do the exam. So just get on with it and do it. And once you have done it, then obviously you are ready to submit your application once your evidence is ready for that. Audit cycle, as I mentioned earlier, make sure that you choose a decent topic and make sure that you have given a few months before you do your audit cycle, rather than just writing one up and then a month down the line you write the second one up. So give it a few months. Level 1 ultrasound, locally for John Radcliffe, Dr. Priya Marathe, find out your local ultrasound lead or use Infomet. Reflection, there has to be at least 10 reflections written over a 5-year period. For Simon Smith, who is one of the members who sit on the committee, he said to me at least do 12 or 15. So I wrote about, I think 13 or 14. CPD, 250 hours. It does not have to be exactly 50 hours per year. If 1 year you have done 100 hours, then that's fine. You just need to make up 250 hours of your CPD. As I said, member of the Royal College. And finally, please be very careful that you choose your referees very carefully. Some of them, they are very friendly, but they sit on their pod and do not write your reference till the last day. So just make sure that you choose your people who are proactive and will reply to the request from GMC to write the reference. Tricks, which obviously I can only talk about it retrospectively. Initially, there are things which I messed up too in my application. So start early. Thanks to Priya, Helen, and Harpreet to setting this up. We did not have a clue. I remember once walking into one of my colleagues, senior colleagues' office, and I said, "Oh, I want to know how to approach for this application." And I was in the second year of my kind of way to do the CESR. And he said to me, "Have you done your secondments?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Get out. Do your bits first and then come back and ask for it." So now you guys have all the information you require that needs to be processed before the application is done. So make sure you take benefit of this. So in terms of the evidence, it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. You can start even from today. Print out your checklist, put it in a box, put it somewhere, find a space in your house where you're going to put your evidence in, and then under every checklist heading, start putting in the evidence, whatever you get during the time. And then in the final year, when you are putting in the application, you really don't need to work that hard. To make sure those who are married, they ask their wife where they're putting it, where they can put their evidence, because it can easily be destroyed. So be very careful. Work-based assessment, as I said, at least 2 or 3 for each major presentation, but make sure that you do not link your work-based assessment to more than 3 things. So one of the guy, he kind of linked it to about 10 or 12 each work-based assessment he was doing. So that certainly annoys the assessor rather than making him happy. So make sure not more than 3 links per work-based assessment. Where you cannot find the presentation in your clinical setting, then just do an e-learning for that. However, for DOPS, you cannot do e-learning. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I haven't done LP." Yes, you haven't done LP, but you have done anesthesia. You have come across spinal anesthesia given in theatre, so you can use that for an LP. Please use the formal forms for each secondment, as like I think they are for medicine, peds, anesthesia, ITU. So make sure you use those forms and they are signed at the end of the day. Communication, any communication, whether it's just an email, you can just keep a record of that. That is what you have communicated outside the ED department, not within the ED department. And then finally, your logbook. We have the facility to print your logbook from the computer in John Radcliffe. I'm sure the other hospitals will have the same facility to do that. But having said that, the kind of stress of taking the identifiable data off does take some time. So entirely up to you. That if you want to maintain your logbook from the start, where obviously it's an Excel sheet, you just put in some information there and you create that logbook. And then at the end of the day, you don't have to worry about the identifiable data on that logbook. But make sure that once you have completed your logbook, you then, and Excel will make it very easy for you, that you break it down, that how many chest pains, how many abdominal pains, how many peds presentation, how many DOPs you have done, so that there is a breakdown for that, so that it just makes it easy for your assessor to actually do assess your application. And I'm sure the less effort they have to put in, they are happy to do this for you. And any complaints you reply, any CE you have come across, any coroner's report you have written, make sure you keep tab of that, because that all comes in your management portfolio. And that is it, everybody. And I now hand it back to Priya.
Okay, we've got Mohammed Sohail asking a question. He's raised his hand up. Mohammed, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, hi there. Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for the tips and tricks. Quite helpful to note all of that. I had two questions mainly. One, regarding the secondments, okay? Is there, from my understanding of it, they do not want any evidence base which is more than 5 years old when it comes to secondments. And
yeah,
if I have done my secondments in another country, each for 3 months, is there a way to show them I have kept my skills up so that I don't have to repeat the secondments here?
So the secondment you have done, which country is that?
South Africa. So I did my formal training in South Africa together with my
fellowship exam. Right. My take on that is that it is possible that it will be accepted if you have a form signed by your local ITU and anesthesia lead. If you can just go to them and they sign the formal form, which is obviously available on the training, you know, I can't remember. You know, the curriculum, in the curriculum, these forms are there. So if you print out those forms, go to them and ask them, are they willing to sign this? Then I'm sure they will accept it. But this final answer, I think it should come from Simon, because Simon sits on it. Priya, what's your take on that?
So it is ideal that your secondments are less than 6 years old. If they are not less than 6 years old, then you have to show that you have kept your skills up through the years. Yes. And let's say, for example, you've done your anesthesia secondment, then you have to show that you have done, let's say, conscious sedation, or attended a lecture on anesthetics, or a conference where there was a section on anesthetics, or performed intubation or sedation or induction in the emergency room, and that you've kept your knowledge and your skills up throughout the 6 years. Same goes with intensive care and pediatrics. So if you haven't shown enough, then I think they will not accept it if it's more than 6 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you for that. And the second question I have, maybe Priya can help answer it partially as well. I did my level 1 ultrasound, which was certified in South Africa, and the guys from the UK who are involved, and having spoken to previous colleagues who have done their CESR here successfully, essentially they got a letter to say that the training from South Africa was endorsed. If someone can help me direct to somebody that I can speak to regarding this, because I'm just trying to find out who can help me endorse my training.
Okay, Priya, I think it's your need.
So what we need for you is you should have done a course on learning the 4 level 1 scans. You can do some extra RCEM e-learning, which is on the RCEM e-learning website, and it's very easy to do. It's less than 2 hours, or an hour it might take for you. If you have a log of cases that you have done in the UK, that's also good. If you want to be absolutely certain that it will be accepted in your CESR application, you can just approach your local POCUS lead and have them do triggered assessments with you, which is just the one test. They just have to watch you do one scan of each of AAA, fast, IV access, and echo and life support. And if they're satisfied with your performance, they can just say that you have done all the knowledge, skills, and you have the right behavior, and then they can sign you off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you have already done a lot of POCUS back in South Africa, like I had done back in India, I had done all of my training and my scans during my fellowship, ultrasound fellowship back in India. So when I came here, all I had to do was go for the school with the school as in the exam where the triggered assessments was done. And I did it pretty quickly after coming into the UK. So it was still less than a year old, you know, when I had done my fellowship. So they looked at my portfolio, and of course I passed the school, and then I was level 1 certified. So it's not very difficult to do. Ultrasound is probably the easiest one to do in the CESR sort of portfolio that you have to prepare. The other things, yeah. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me and I can answer.
Okay, I have one question back for Hassan, Aqib, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So you talked about the audit cycle. If I do a QIP in the department, does this tick the criteria, or do I have to do an audit cycle separately?
No. If you have done a QIP and you have redone it, then that's fine.
Okay. So essentially, if I finish the
so not just one, you would need to obviously you're going to go into that cycle again, that okay, first QIP revealed that I made these changes and then I have redone that. So that's fine.
Okay.
And the other thing I was going to say, that if you plan to finish your exam and then do a locum consultant for a year and then apply, or at least a 6-month locum consultant and then apply for the CESR application, the life is much easier to get your form signed. When you are asking for forms to be signed as a registrar, there's a lot of resistance if they haven't seen you doing something. But once you have changed your chairs, it becomes easier to get it signed.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another hand raised. Dr. MHUSS.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Mohammed. I work in Leicester. I'm putting together my application now on the GMC website, and I have 2 questions. One with regards to the indicative period of training. So the time I spent in emergency medicine in total is more than enough, but I did 5 years of that in back home in Egypt. And over the last 5 years in the UK, if you take my secondment time out and I got some time dedicated for research as well, all the time I had spent in the UK, the clinical time would equate to around 3 years within the last 5 years. Is there much weight to how much time do you spend in the UK out of your total clinical practice? I mean, in terms of evidence, I got pretty much all the evidence I need to tick all the boxes on the e-portfolio. But the evidence from back home, I did a formal training program, but all the evidence is certificates of employment and a postgraduate certificate. There isn't workplace-based assessment as such. Should I be worried about the time I spent in the UK, the clinical time is only 3 years?
Mohammed, answer to that question is, when I attended my first meeting before I submitted my application, there was a guy from Reading who had his evidence mainly from South Africa, no, from Australia. And his take was that you should have spent in total 8 years in emergency medicine. It doesn't matter. This is from the SHO level upwards. So it does not matter how much you have spent in UK, but provided that they are willing to accept your evidence from Egypt. And the answer to that is you will only know once you have submitted your application. So let's assume you submit it now, you carry on doing your emergency medicine after that. And by the time your application is decided, it will be another 6 months. So even if they come up with that kind of objection on your application that you haven't done 4 years in emergency medicine here, then you would have already done 3.5 years anyway. So you can then complete and resubmit the application again. You don't have to resubmit the whole application, it's just the additional evidence.
Yeah, thanks. My second question is about the taking the curriculum boxes. Is one assessment or one learning module typically enough? Because when you open the curriculum details for each presentation, it's sometimes multifaceted, different presentations. Do I need? Should I be anxious about taking everything that the curriculum says?
No.
Or just one presentation?
No. If you print the form out, you should be ticking everything on the form. So, for example, I remember from medicine, there were at least, like, I think there were about 10 plus minor presentations in acute general medicine that you have to tick. So some of it you can tick by seeing a patient, some of it you can tick by doing an e-learning. Personally, one work-based assessment against each major presentation, unless they are all kind of signed by a senior person and also stating that you don't need any improvement in that, then that will be acceptable. Otherwise, I think at least 2 or 3 per major presentation is more suitable.
And a follow-up question from that is about learning modules and CPD and that. Is this suitable to link to curriculum items without reflection, or do I have to have a recorded reflection on each and every learning activity or module or CPD conference and things like that to be accepted?
Well, each learning e-learning is doing serving two purposes for you. One, you have to take the box on the e-learning side. So, for example, if we take alcoholism or we take delirium, so you have done delirium by doing the e-learning, and also you have earned a 1 CPD point against that. So I would just write like 2 or 3 lines that this is what I learned from this, and that is it.
Okay, thank you.
Great. We have another question from Helen.
I've got 2 questions.
Great.
So following on from the question about audits, is there a specific number of audits or audit cycles or service improvement cycles that we need, or is it just one that you have to show evidence of?
Well, ideally 1 every year, but 1 audit cycle. So in total 5, but 1 must have an audit cycle completed.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. My other question is about CPD and what counts for CPD. I think I was talking to some people recently who were mentioning actually that if you read a book, for example, that is related in some way to medicine, you could count that as CPD. So I think just for clarity, it would be interesting to perhaps talk about what sorts of things count for CPD, because I think it's probably much broader than people might imagine.
No, anything. So if you go on the CPD diary on the RCEM website, if your activity can find a box which you can tick on that, there are 4 domains on that. If you can find a box which is related to anything, then that is a CPD activity. For example, if you have just read a book about management, you can put it in the management as like a leadership or something. So even that is, yes, it will be classed as a CPD.
Brilliant, thank you. That's really helpful.
All right, so coming to the CPD bit of it, you said a minimum of 250 hours. So, for example, I have been here for about a year, 14 months roughly, and I only started my, like I've got my CPD hours to show that I've been collecting CPD, but I would not get to 5 years. I'm not planning to wait to 5 years to submit because of I want to use my additional evidence from South Africa, but we didn't do CPD collection over there, essentially. So I don't have 250 in total. I have minimum to show that I've done at least 50 every year. It's more than 50, but I've shown that I've done what is needed while I was here. Does that mean that I need to wait until I get to 50, or can I just go ahead and submit because I've been doing it every year?
No. Okay, Mohammed, what you can do is, are you a member of college?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you go on that CPD diary, so which year you're gonna start your evidence from? If you put in your application, let's say this year.
So I've started collecting bits since I joined the UK, since I came to the UK.
No. So what year of evidence from South Africa you're gonna use?
Oh, from 2013.
Okay, so from 2013 up till now, this is 7 years. Okay, so you need to concentrate from 2015 onwards.
Okay.
All right. So from 2015 onwards, I'm sure you would have done every year something which will be classed as a CPD, even if it's attending a course, going into journal club, discussing a case, attending an ultrasound course, anything that you have done in those years, because this RCEM diary lets you put in retrospectively.
Okay.
And see that where you come to in terms of because you must make sure that you have evidence against that. It can't be just a verbal thing. So you must have an evidence against it in some form. So then see how many hours that you have achieved by putting in all the evidence. And let's say you come to about 200 in total, then just do an extra 50 hours before you submit your application. You need 250 hours doesn't mean that you also need to have all of them here.
Okay.
It is much easier than people think to get CPD hours added into your portfolio. It is, if you go onto the RCEM Learning and you spend about 15-20 minutes doing one learning session or doing one SAQ or reading a blog, that 20 minutes counts. So if you read 3 blogs, it adds up to 1 hour. If you attend your clinical governance meeting, that is 2 hours. You can add 2 hours into your CPD. So you are already, I think many people already do lots of CPD activity, but it is not thought to, they don't consider it in their minds to be a CPD activity, therefore don't add it in. So look at it like this. If you think you're attending anything, it could be a handover teaching, it could be bedside learning, it could be any teaching event, any meeting, a group activity where you have learned something, where you thought you can ask a question, that counts as CPD activity. So you attending this webinar 1 hour is a CPD activity because you're here with people and you're asking questions and you're learning something for your professional performance. So this also counts as CPD activity. Okay. So I hope that's answered your question. Please put in more questions into the chat box if you want. We have another question here from Helen, and which is, can we explain the different types of evaluations that are on ePortfolio, DOPS versus WBA? So thanks for your question, Helen. Our next webinar is going to be just on ePortfolio and what WPBAs mean, what MiniCex means, what CBD means. But I can try and answer it in less than a minute for now. Workplace-based assessment is WPBA. Okay, so anytime you think I want an assessment on something that I have done at my workplace, it would count as WPBA. CBD is a case-based discussion. So For example, when you come to your consultant on shift and discuss a case that you have already seen, without the consultant or your senior actually seeing the patient with you, that counts as a case-based discussion. You can also take a case with you, print it out, write it up, and set up time or meeting time with a consultant and say, I would like to come and discuss this case with you. Go through the case off the shop floor in a meeting room. That would count as a case-based discussion. So you're just, a MiniCex is a mini clinical exercise. That means the consultant is standing in the room, or your senior is standing in the room as you take the patient's history, examine the patient, decide on a management plan, perform procedures, perform an examination, talk what you're doing based on those results. So if all of those things have been seen by your senior who's going to sign you off, that counts as a mini clinical exercise. DOPS is a directly observed procedure. Okay, so if you are, let's say, performing a venous cannulation and your consultant or your senior has seen you perform it, then that counts as a directly observed procedure, and you can ask for an assessment for that. That was just in short, but but the next webinar, so you should come to our next webinar if you want to understand the UK NHS e-portfolio, which is quite difficult. I think even for me it was very difficult to understand it, and it's all online now, so we don't have any paper portfolio bits left at all. All right, so there's another question, which is, does every CPD activity need to be signed off? So no, every CPD activity does not need to be signed off. If you put it into the CPD diary, which we talked about last time, you can put it in, you can put your own time, how much ever time you have spent on that CPD activity. What would really help and how it would count in the minds of the person who is actually assessing your CPD diary is if you have reflected on what you have put in. So if you say, I learned this, I asked this question, this was interesting. Following on from this particular CPD activity, I went ahead and did this activity or read this book or spoke to this person. So you have to show that you were engaged in that activity. You have learned something from it, and then you have gone ahead and done something about it. That reflection is very important. Only then it seems like you have actually done it and taken it seriously. Otherwise, lots of people could just add in things and not reflect on it, not learn anything from it, and it would still count to their hours. The examiners on the other end who are assessing our applications are very thorough, I would say. They are looking at everything very, very clearly, and just adding in things and adding up the hours won't help. You have to show that you've learned something from it. Aqib, do you have anything to add?
No, no, not at all. I think what you said makes sense.
All right, so we've got a comment. Books, a bit of a stretch with Ellen. Do you want to talk about the books that you've put in?
These were just I was just going back to what counts as CPD. So there are lots of interesting books out there. Those are just the names of a few books that might count for CPD if people want to have a look, but maybe a sort of slightly easier reading than sitting reading journals, but just give a different perspective on things. Atul Gawande has some really good books. There's lots of really interesting stuff out there, so I might even put a list on the website. Actually, that might be quite a nice thing, just compile a list. And the other thing I wanted to say was, so I'm possibly one of the trainees who will be doing doing the next webinar on ePortfolio. It would be quite interesting for me to know prior to the webinar, sorry, what people's experiences are and what specifically people find difficult on the portfolio. I've been using it since I was an F1, so I'm a lot more familiar with it than a lot of people will be. So it might be nice to have your perspective, just so that I can kind of pitch it at the right level. So if people want to get in touch with either directly with me, I think via the CESR the WhatsApp group, or via the Teams, you're very welcome just to put a message on Teams as well, so that hopefully I can pitch it at the right level and talk about any specific things that people want to know about, or maybe things that people find difficult. Talking about the next webinar is going to be on the Saturday, the 8th of August, and I think it's at 10 AM.
It's at 10 AM, yes.
Yeah.
You will put it, I think it's already up on the website as well as a reminder, so please put it in your diaries. We can have a few more questions. We still have time. If anyone wants to ask any other questions. Aqib, do you want to add anything?
Not really. I think my experience where I came across some hurdles, I have mentioned that in the talk. And I think the only way around it is to start early, and you can only start early if you know what to do, which I believe this group now knows what to do. So if at the end of the 5 years they feel nobody told them, then they need to go back and see this recording again.
Yes, yes. So a few of the things take a bit of time, I think. So lots of people find completing the ultrasound portfolio difficult because there aren't, there are always not many people who can supervise your scans. So start early doing that. At the JR, it's quite easy. I think we've put up a list of the people who can sign you off. And so start early with that. Our audit lead is Ravi, so please contact him and ask him if there are any audits that you can be part of, or if you have an idea for audit in mind, then you can always discuss with him and plan the audit. Okay, just to make sure other people are not working on the same audit. So that's another thing that takes time. Please go and look at the 5 stages of completing an audit. You have to give enough time for each stage, and you have to know that you can complete all the 5 stages, and then write it up so that the reader can understand what you have, what question you had, how you made the change, and how you audited the pre and post result. And another thing that you must start doing very early on is thinking about being mindful in your CESR sort of application. You have to think about what you're doing. Are you learning anything in that moment? If you are, if the answer is yes, put it in your diary. So it will add on over time. So that shouldn't be something that should stress you out. Just every day think about, what did I learn today? Can I link it to a learning session? Can I link it to a case? One of the things that we had discussed when the 3 of us were talking about it was, if everyone did 1 WPBA every day, just think of 1 WPBA every day. It could be putting a plaster on, it could be putting an IV cannula in, it could be putting staples in somebody's scalp. It could be small little things that you did that day. How can you demonstrate what you did that day? How can you account for the day that you had on shift? Think about that every evening when you go home. Spend half an hour on it and send a ticket. Every day, just do 1, and then that'll make sure you can have your portfolio built up and your CPD diary built up. Any other questions? Yes, Aqib.
Can I just say that some of the junior registrars, they can use Lydia to get some of their WBA signed, because she's happy to sign those. Obviously, you can start building up from there. Or if there are things which Priya just mentioned, as putting a plaster, or you have done staples, things like that. So obviously her signature will count for those things because she's a senior person. So Lydia can help you in that too if you want to get you signed off. Obviously, you just need to show her some evidence for that.
Okay. And also remember that it doesn't have to be just your seniors who can sign you off. Even seniors from other departments can sign you off on those little plastics or max facts or trauma related procedures that you've done. We have a question from Mohammed.
Question about the formal sign-off for secondments. So far, I've used the educational meetings and the sign-off of actual competencies on the curriculum, but Dr. Hafeez mentioned something about formal forms that I'm ought to use. I had a look now on the blank form section on the e-portfolio, and I don't seem to find any specific formal forms for sign-off. Could you give me a pointer on where to look for these, or what I should do?
Okay, Mohammed, if you go onto the RCEM website and look for the curriculum.
Yeah.
So for ST3 training, you will find the PEDS form and the anesthesia form.
Yeah.
And for higher surgical training, you will find the form for AGM, for emergency medicine, and for ITU.
That's on the 2015 curriculum.
Yes.
Right, okay.
And if you still struggle, then drop an email to Helen and I will source them and I'll send it to Helen.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, we've got another 4 minutes if anyone wants to ask any questions about how not to nosedive your CESR application. We've got Aqib here to answer any of your questions. But if not, we will see you at the next webinar, which is on the 8th of August at 10 a.m. And the theme of that webinar is going to be what to do with the NHS UK e-portfolio and how to use it best to display all of the awesome work that you do every day. So how best to use it. And so we can see you on the 8th of August at 10 a.m. All right. So thank you, Aqib, for coming and for giving us all of the tips and tricks. And I'm sure everyone attending has benefited greatly from your wisdom. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And thank you, everyone, for attending. We will see you all next time. Okay. And until then, yeah, keep adding to your CPD diary. Keep adding to your CPD diary.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you, Priya.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, team. Bye.